Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the kickoff of this academic year's and fall semester's Berlage Keynote series. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody to this evening's lecture given by Dirk Simons on behalf of Bovenbouw. Each semester, the Berlage organizes 8 Berlage Keynotes where we invite designers at the forefront of design thinking and practice to present on their most recent work. It has been a tradition of recent years to kick off the academic year with a practitioner from within the Low Countries, and it is a pleasure to have Dirk do so this evening. In addition, it's also a rarity that we have one of our own colleagues actually here at this orange podium to speak. Bovenbouw was founded in 2011 by Dirk. The practice builds on the tensions between thinking and acting, between past and present. The work ranges from housing and public buildings to exhibitions and other forms of practice. Beyond the office, Dirk is an excellent educator. Many of you I see in the audience, I think, have had him in one form or another. So at any rate, I am pleased to give the floor to Dirk. It's wonderful to have you back at the Berlage 12 and a half years later after we had you with your previous practice workhouse. So I remember very fondly that lecture in April 2010. So I'm very curious to hear from you a little more than a decade later, how your ideas have evolved, how they've crystallized, how they've nuanced. So thank you, Dirk, for kicking off this semester's lecture series.
Okay. Thanks for the intro, Salomon. Thank you for coming. It's nice to be here. I've been teaching here for 19 years, so I'll be claiming my golden pen next year at Dick van Gamer's office. Yes, I had to, a lot of the projects I'll be showing, I've shown them quite a few times, but I made a new intro and woven some more new content, reflections through the lecture. I hope you like it. And I had to come up with a name for the lecture, a title, before I sort of fabricated this new stuff. So I was thinking maybe a proper title, more proper could have been something like My Favorite Phenomenologists. But then I thought, oh, nobody's gonna come. so this one will be fine. So this is us, just some folks doing buildings and projects. And this is my first takeaway. Because I don't know if you sometimes have this feeling that, you know, if you study architecture, that you talk a lot about circumstances, history, sustainability, technology, all that kind of stuff. But then there's always this black dot in the middle, which you could call design. And, it somehow feels often to me that people are a bit uneasy to frontally speak about that. So that's a bit, the black dot there in the middle, which I sense, is a bit the focus of this stuff I added to the lecture. And a lot of that black dot, you can find books on the black dot, but they're really rather dusty. So these are the dusty books, and I really like them, but probably you, this is my pointer. should help me with, see if you can get a red light out of it. So okay, yes. So there's a sort of body of knowledge which is really talking about architectural design, but somehow I don't know, it kind of died out. Although I asked a lot of my teaching colleagues, like, which book would you recommend a student if the student asks you, like, I'd like to improve my design skills, but, what book should I read? And I don't know, I had a lot of answers. Maybe Venturi's Complexity Contradiction was the book which was mentioned most. Maybe also the most satisfactory, obvious answer. But Venturi talks a lot, well, not a lot, but I think he mentions, and he got a lot of his insights from Tristan Edwards, which nobody knows. And Tristan Edwards, I think a lot of his very phenomenological reflections on architecture, they got picked up mostly in after-war era by Rudolf Arnheim, and then there's other people which kind of worked on that thread of knowledge. So it's kind of interesting. And maybe, if you want to start with the light version of this sort of writing, you could try this book, which is a very, very fun and very, easy book to read. I maybe want to, it's really stupid, want to start with a quiz question, and the question here is, what's wrong with these 5 columns? Well, it's 5, yeah. Well, 2 are the same, they're just on sale on Alibaba, but no emphasis, exactly. But probably most of you are not familiar with the word emphasis. But thanks, Mark. You win a book. So this is emphasis. This is a column which has a gentle curve. And I think if I would have asked this question like 100 years ago, I'm not that old, but if I would, probably people would have been, they would already have known the answer before or seen the problem before I asked the question. And then it kind of does say something about, our skill to our visual knowledge on architecture, I would say. The fact that we're not so familiar anymore with this thing, throughout history, that people put so much effort in emphasis, and we don't even, notice whether it's there or not. But actually, it is, formally speaking, a big problem, because if your column is just a cylinder, it's just a stick with 2 weird things at both ends. And if a column has emphasis, it actually is much more of a thing of itself, and it has its own gravity point. And you will actually see that the gravity point of the column is never or hardly never in the center. It's always a bit lower. So, and there are endless versions of that sort of stuff. So I think we're taught a bit that classical orders are rather static while they're extremely dynamic. It's very hard to find 2 Doric columns which are really identical if they're in different buildings. And I know it's a creepy intro to a lecture, but it'll be easier later on. So this is a book I mentioned in the beginning, and you could say, oh my God, it's very, maybe Western inspired or Eurocentric to talk about something like this. But these are columns which, I think this is Japan in the 6th century or so. So, this is a Persian column, or this one, I think this one, it's in Persepolis. Anyway, it's just, if you go all over the world, you will find these things. They're pretty universal aspects of architecture. And well, another quiz question could be, which row is the better design, the top or the bottom row? Is it hard? Nobody's really certain? That's an interesting experiment to me. If I would say raise your hand if it's the top row, how many hands would go up? 6-ish, 70. And if it's the bottom row, okay, it's kind of the same. Shit. It actually destroys my next slide. Anyway, no, it is the top row. I have to. And the reason, obviously, is that, just like I mentioned, that the gravity point of a column is not in the center. It's far more excited if it's off-center. So this is rather dull as a shape compared to that, which has a far more dynamic line. I know this might sound a bit subjective, but if you take this thing, which has a symmetrical base, and you add an ear on one side, it doesn't make sense compositionally. You have to, if you add one ear, you have to do something else to balance it. Otherwise, it's not good composition. And if you have a vase like this with a dynamic curve, you should add something which works with that curve, not something which just like two flappy ears added onto it. So it's maybe it's easier like this. Who's still in favor of the bottom row? I should reverse the slides. Okay. Maybe. So the next slide is actually a bit of a problem because I was assuming it would be a little bit easier. Okay, I'm going home. No, I'm kidding. No, the thing I say often also to students is your mind is the biggest threat to your design skills because often when you're kind of struggling with something, your mind starts to sort of find reasons why it is good. While we generally visually, sort of have a lot of understanding built up from seeing stuff all the time, which helps us to know what is a better design and what is not such a great design. And to train that knowledge makes a lot of sense, I think. And but you're obviously from a medical point of view, it's ridiculous to say that your eyes are smarter than your head. But from an architectural point of view, I think it makes a lot of sense. What I like a lot is to listen to people who don't know anything about architecture and listen to what they say. And there's a lot of visual knowledge in what people say. And I think it's a part of our job to try to understand that kind of remarks and considerations. It's kind of tricky to talk about this universal stuff and then switch to design. It's like you have to apologize maybe for that. I'll just briefly show a house which we almost finished in Brussels, and I'll come back to the phenomenology stuff later. It's a very shallow house on a weird L-shaped plot. Shallow meaning that there's very thick walls because it's a passive house. They already consume 15% of the section. So we added a window bay to give the house a little bit more depth on its shallower part. And it's a house with a front facade on the south, so we wanted to get some sun in a narrow street. So basically, the essence of going into the house is also going up along this stair, which using these curves kind of smoothens this asymmetric route. Then we have children's bedrooms and a shed room for the children. We have the parents with their office and a bathroom in the window bay. And then we have, finally you come up in the sitting and the dining area. And there's a roof terrace. This is during construction. And in a way, this smoothing of the route also became a motif in the detailing of the building by using a curve as a unifying motif. And talking about the building, we were quite interested in this reference of a Palladio of a house in Vicenza, which Palladio got commissioned solely as the front elevation. So the guy who owned the house or bought the house was not a citizen of Vicenza, and the municipality of Vicenza, they said, okay, you can become a citizen, but your house is so ugly, you have to put a new facade on top of it, and we like you to ask Palladio to do it. So it's kind of an interesting, story on migration in Europe in the early days. Anyway, the house was ugly, but it had apparently a beautiful fireplace in the living room, and Palladio had to work around it. So he made this big central blind motif and then pushed the windows to the side. And actually everything around that is kind of like secondary, but it makes a very dull, simple house very exciting. And this symmetry, which you've seen with the flower pots, can be a little bit of a dull thing when you push it to the side. And empty the central axis actually becomes quite exciting. This is Pierre von Meys. He's telling that story essentially on symmetry with the Villa Schwab and Perret. So it's kind of cool, these kind of universal aspects in architecture. So in the narrow street, we also, in the early stage, we had a flat facade with 4 big windows, and 4 is never a great number in architecture, certainly not on a horizontal. Vertically, it could be something, but I'm trying to tell too much in 1 hour, but we introduced this window bay, so you would, actually turn 4 into 3. It's a blind bay, so you don't face your neighbors, but you look into the axis of the street, and that's basically it. This is the back with the tower in the small courtyard, and then it's a brick building. We looked for a way, always again, to enhance this idea of undulating facade in the brickwork. So we chopped bits of a large brick and turned them on the side, used some whole bricks vertically, and made a bit of a carpet of brickwork, sort of rolling over the facade and folding inside as well. So that's more or less how it looks. And you can see from the back street, and this is when you go up, some study models. This is a bathroom where if you open the curtain, you can look down into the street. This is a green kitchen. And okay, this is a little bit new to me. This is one of these books I mentioned, and this is maybe a tough one. But I talked a little bit about numbers in architecture. Nobody, when I studied architecture, nobody ever told me why 3 is better than 2 and better than 4. It's so basic, but it's absent in our education. It's very funny, but I won't go into that. And then this word, actually, I think I read it first in Complexity and Contradiction by Venturi, but it's also totally absent from education. While it's a very fundamental word, I think, to judge the quality of a design. And just to talk to you about it, which butterfly do you like best? Who doesn't like number 3 best? Okay, you can go home. No, nobody was raising his hand. Anyway, the thing is, inflection is a word which actually refers to how you know, the hybrid composite character of a building actually, with all its different components, sort of manages to relate all these components, you know, to perform as a singular object. Because buildings consist of zillions of different things. And, you know, in a sort of classical understanding of what good architecture is, all these things kind of relate to each other or actually add up to the performance of a composition. And that's what, you know, inflection actually means. Is this boring? Okay. So, I mean, a classical example is the Porta Pia of Michelangelo, where, you know, it's one of these designs, you know, many historians call Mannerist because it's just very complicated figures all combined and superimposed. And there are rather few, you know, writers, historians who get beyond the point and properly manage to analyze a composition like this. So, you know, it's about outward forces here pulled back, and then the arch is going up again, and then the pediment is going up again. What did I do? Great. Yes, I got it. So it's a lot about forces. It's very vectorial in a way, this phenomenological reading of buildings. And again, you know, the fact that, you know, things start to, you know, relate to each other. They make complexity, you know, inflected, you could say, interested in the way that components actually enrich each other as elements. Okay. Anyway, so again, tricky to switch to a building, but I'll do it. We made a building block here with Ferguson Bates and bulk, and I think one of the points we made in the beginning is that you know, this could be Holland. I'm not sure. It could also be Germany, but doesn't matter. But we said like this is, we have a dock, and a dock is a beautiful, quiet moment in a city. You know, don't stuff it with architecture. But it's also, you know, it's an aspect of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7. 7 is really the max. Beyond 7, everything's just a lot. You could I should have found a photo with 8. But in a way, you know, 5 is one tipping point, and 7 is really the ultimate tipping point. But generally, you know, everything which is 5 or less visually has a certain understandability. So this is not so understandable, and it doesn't have the, you know, it's just a lot of stuff. It's not an interesting series or rhythm or whatever. So we should watch out with these references. I think old streets were very aware of the fact that there were a lot of buildings, but they were also one. So the variations are very subtle. And then you can do these things. You can't do these things if you go too wild. We made a building block with a very long elevation on the water, a big one on the boulevard, and smaller blocks on the more, let's say, freight side of the situation. So Ferguson Bates made this long block. We got the head of the block, the back. This is the part we did. I'll just skip a bit of these photos. I'll just focus on things which matter in the. We have a. This is a nice kind of way of being able to look through the block. This is the garden. This is one corner. The corner facing the docks is wide, is stretched. The corner facing the inner city is more compressed. Those are neighbors. And I would just like to, also in teaching, I think the making an elevation has become a little bit of a field of knowledge we're not talking so much about anymore. I think Tony once, Tony Fretton once also said, like, if the elevation doesn't work, change the plan. I still like that quote. So in a way, it's a little bit old school. But what you see here is 7 bays. It's the maximum. And it's obviously you want the center to enter. Even numbers are really more difficult in good architecture than odd numbers. This is really important. And there's a rhythm A, A, B, A, B, A, A. So generally, we're very focused on getting everything within same measure. But that actually, a good facade can have some vibrance, some liveliness. And it's a building of 7 stories. Also the maximum. No, kidding. Not true. It's actually a stack of 4. It's a plinth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's a crown, sort of a small 5th thing. So, they're all identical apartments, but just by adding this line and that one, you get a certain interesting stack again. And the windows, they subtly widen, also here. So that makes the form kind of open up, kind of blossom a bit. And the curve on the ground floor is shallower, this is deeper, and then the crown is even more deeper. So, these things I feel are complexities which a good facade needs, but it's a field of knowledge we don't talk about so much, which is, I think, wrong in education. It's not just about the facade, though, but we also like the route, the path. So we enter here, we have a nice lobby, and we go up to the apartments. So it's a lot of attention to the smaller moments in the building. This is the floor plan with 2 cores, and you see if you design a building and then you design the elevation, it's a tragedy. You can't do that. It's because you can see how hard we need to work to get a symmetrical building into an odd amount of base. But if you need it, then you end up doing it simultaneously, the facade and the plan. So here you have 4 apartments on a central core, and here's 5. There's a nice aspect here that this is a space with glazed fire doors looking over the stair into the garden. Ah yeah, Tony, I have you here. I already kind of messed up that slide then. Okay, so this is, here you can see the scallops, which are a bit deeper on the 1st floor onwards. Here you can go into the building. It's a guy who looks like Walter van Beirendonck. There's the passage open to the garden. You go in. It's not cheap housing. Some veneer. Here you can also see the staircase going up. Here the staircase. And this is like the lobby of the apartments, entrance lobby where you can see through to the garden. I added some pictures because there's also kind of a scenic aspect to these apartments diagonally. This is how they look if you buy them. This is how a developer sells them. This is a little movie. Yeah. Okay. So I'll talk about this house in. somewhere outside of Antwerp. This is a dike in the Schelde, the river, which also passes through Antwerp. You know, this is a flood area of that river, so this is on a slightly, you know, sloping area, and I'll talk about this house. This is a collage of the house on the slope, very tall trees around it, and kind of slopes up, you know, 150 or something. And it's a small house. It's kind of a bungalow, and we said like, this slope. I mean, it's a bit like in Holland. If you see a slope, you're like, wow, slope, special. So we're gonna make the most out of the slope. So most houses there either have a split level or just bulldozer things. But we said, okay, we're just gonna stick very close to the slope. So it's actually it's a path up to the living room. On your way, there's some rooms and some stuff, and then higher up, you end up here, and you look back. It's a very sunny side of the house. You look back into the small patio, but you actually also look over the patio because you went up. And again, look, it's Tony Day. As this very beautiful reference, Tony designed this monastery once in Scotland, and it's a courtyard monastery. So it's a bit of a dull plan, you could say, but then the section makes it very exciting because once you're all the way up, you can sort of, you're in the intimacy of the courtyard, but you can see over the building to the sea. So like, and this is another reference. Moretti is actually a guy who was also a big fan of this phenomenological thread in architecture. And he was very interested in how he could recuperate classical notions of beauty in contemporary architecture. So he did all these weird studies. And like here you can, it's barely, he used the base of a column and he puts it vertical. So you look at the same object but differently, you know, disconnected from its original purpose, just as pure form in a way. And then, you know, he just sketched a lot of these classical moldings, and I think one of the lessons of classical beauty, and this is really, if you understand it, if I say it like this, you might not fully. It's quite easy to make beautiful stuff because, in a way, in classical architecture, always the coincidence of round, angular, I mean orthogonal and king shapes which produce beauty. You can see it in every Renaissance elevation, but you can also try to use it differently. So in a way, we thought like, if we do a curved wall and a kinked wall and we try to fit it in an orthogonal figure, it'll be beautiful. And then it turned out to be a shitty bungalow in concrete blocks. But then, it wasn't painted. But in a way, the effect is kind of, I don't know, interesting. It's a lot. I think also in the corridor where it comes together, the kinked wall and the curved wall, kind of, you know, in a way, strongly related to classicism, but nothing, you know, classical about it. You can see the patio. Here you're up. You're looking down. You look into corridor and the patio, and here you have the patio and the moment where you're actually looking out of the patio, not seeing any of the neighbors. There are a lot of houses around there, but you sort of feel connected to this landscape, the slope, the river, the trees. It kind of all comes together. As a collage, if we don't have a lot of work, we burn some money in the office by making collages like these. And we're sort of interested in graphicality of the building more than the heavy aspect of the building, because we wanted to. First, we thought it's on a slope, so it should be a light building because it's following the slope rather than a brick block being imposed. And it's like maybe we should do it in wood, but then the contractor of the neighboring house could take over, and he wasn't into wood, so we said, okay, we make a brick building, but we will make it light, so it doesn't have the weight of brickwork. So it's more like block work. And then we also try to avoid the weight of the reveal of brickwork. So we made these 45-degree angles, and we changed the brickwork around the corner, which funny, which goes with that is that it looks like Photoshop, but it's real. Generally, you say the other way around. So that's, I know it's a little bit mannerist. This is some of the on-site work. This is when it gets painted. And we really, it's the first time also in my career, we had to say to the contractor, don't line up the joints. not making them meet. It's funny. Okay. And we have a rather graphical kitchen, and we have, it's a bit dark here, but you can see graphicality of tiles, brickwork. We drilled into the hollow core slabs and made lamps there, and then we painted them, so it becomes a bit of a graphical moment as well. So plenty of inflection, I would say. Another building, a care home, we did. You still fine? I have water. This is, well, the Belgian coast is somewhere here, well, a bit further. But this is parallel, a long road out of Ostend. It's a horrible road. And it takes kilometers, of horrible road to get here from the center, and then here finally, the fabric starts to unravel, and you get some open views, and we thought, okay, that's a moment maybe we could celebrate, because this big building, folds inwards, and then there's just this relatively small villa there, and it's kind of, picking up the building line and pulling it inwards as a termination of a very long and ugly street. So here we pick that line up and you just fold it back. And urbanism is not a big specialty of Belgium, but here there was some success because the city had agreed with the client who wanted to privately build this that he could make his parking on city land shared with these allotments if he would provide for a connection to the new park-like landscape in the back. So we thought that's quite fantastic. And in the competition already, we thought you could make just a road along the building, but that's not so great. So maybe we could go through the building. So the program of a care home and the people passing by would get more involved with each other. So this is the passage, waiting for the bus. This is the park in the back. There's some art. It's a courtyard you walk through and then you go on. Seems to kind of work. These are the allotments in the back. This is the cafe. Um, this is the building. It has this sort of. We looked at the sea and we thought, okay, we have this beach-like brickwork, and we can have, the beach grass, and in ceramic glazed, and we can have parasols for sunscreens. And it's very, it's a little bit cheesy, but anyway. And the design was a terrible mess. We tried something, and I even had a burnout in this period of my life, just trying to figure this thing out. But we probably Hans Hollein is to blame for the burnout. Well, not exclusively. I would be unfair. But we went to Mönchengladbach. It's a fantastic museum just across the German border, and it's this building which is kind of a collage of very different conditions and buildings all in one thing. It has these orthogonal spaces, more organic spaces. There's crazy stuff, both in section and plan, all sort of smashed together. And we felt that could be an interesting hypothesis for a care home, but we didn't really, get that far. This is where you enter the building. You can go one way into a corridor with serviced apartments. There's another small courtyard where there's what we call the shops. There were no shops in the brief, but it's like the chiropractor and the hairdresser and the physiotherapist. And there's also something we call the chapel, which is not really, never got really finished. There's the bar. We've seen the bar from the outside. And then there's a multifunctional space in the back, and then you go up. In a way, around this small patio, you can do your Sunday tour. Go along the shop, the chapel, have a drink, play some cards, and that's kind of what you could call the village aspect of the floor plan. A rather ugly floor plan, I would say. You would get bad marks for it in school. These are the 3 upper floors, which have 3 times 33 rooms, and it's a little bit more balanced, I would say. So essentially, in any care home in Belgium now, it has like clusters of around 16 rooms, and then you better combine them per 2 because there's 1 night nurse for 2 of these clusters. And it's a very rational scheme, but in a way that's also so sad about it. So we were really interested in making something which is a large building, a large repetitive structure, but with a more domestic feeling about it. So one reference which was more digestible for us than Hans Hollein was this Asplund reference of the Villa Snellman, where you have a rather boring plan. It's kind of just a few rooms and a corridor, but within that very boring plan, you have a tapering corridor, exciting staircase. There's a curved room, which also has some effect to the adjacent rooms. There's even a second stair hidden in the wall. So it's kind of exciting, or it's kind of very clever in hiding its rationality and making it rather vibrant and diversified. So we thought we can do 1 oval living room. We can have this pentagon. We could have a corridor, double-loaded. We could have this pill-shaped TV room, then the corridor kinks. There's a curved corridor along the street. There's a little place here, a nook where you can overlook the street. There's a corridor along the courtyard. There's a second living room, which is actually split up. And in a way, the rooms are very generic, but there's kind of like a big house woven through this simple plan. So this is one living room with ugly tablecloth. This is the corridor. We use some color to provide orientation. Corridors always, I mean, it kinks slightly, but it also, has light at the end. This is the curved one, which overlooks the street. You can see a glimpse of the sea. We're going to this room. Hello. So this is the small red room. It's very popular, apparently. It's clad in felt and painted red ceiling. It's they're all wooden floors in a care home. This is when you walk along the courtyard. These are some of the colors we used. It's quite of a headache. So we've done this tour. Ah, yeah. Why is this slide here? Okay. It's very snobbish to be, but I'll just say so. Multiplicity, which isn't reduced to unity, is confusion. That's French is so easy, and unity, which doesn't depend on multiplicity, is tyranny. And I think it's a very beautiful quote by Blaise Pascal, which in a way, if you think about the care home, people, care in this part of the world. Care homes, they're really not so fantastic places. Average time you survive a care home is, I think, 16 months or so. So it's really, the atmosphere there is not so great. You people go there when they really can't do much more anymore, so they barely leave the building. So the idea, the classical notion we have of architecture, being a strong singular piece of, of design, is a little bit tyrannical, you could say, when you impose it on a care home where people sort of spent the last few months of their life barely getting out of it. So this idea to make it, on the edge of, we pushed ourselves to the edge of, how diverse a singular building can be. There are probably better ways to do it, but this is what fascinated us about it. Same ugly table cloths. There are a lot of funny moves in the ceiling. It's actually a way to get the ducts pass through. So it looks very formal, like what's this curved ceiling? All of a sudden there was a jump, but this is the fun, when nasty stuff becomes a tool to make things more special. Okay. Ah, yeah. This is clear, no? I've always had a big love for contextualism, but it doesn't really. It can be a little bit, soggy somehow. People. It doesn't excite people so much. People want to be excited, and then I know I felt a certain dilemma because you want to make embedded work, but then it feels like society wants you to be crazy, and then you start to wonder, can you be crazy and embedded simultaneously? So I know it's a little bit of a weird fetish, but I have this fascination for buildings like this film house by Peter Selsing, which has this, it's a totally new building, but it looks like a cinema, I don't know, of some era. It's not very, you can't say like, this is a typical whatever cinema, but it's very cinema, it has these totally far-fetched ideas which convey the idea that you're in a cinema, even if you're like on the edge of town and it's just a big bunker on the outside. And I always also liked the Noise Museum, which everyone likes, that's easy. But what's so likable about it, I would say, is that it's full of broken pots and pieces, and then the whole museum itself is like this big broken pot. there's a very strong relationship between, you know, the functional identity of the building and the physical identity, and that's a bit of a fetish. So we also, like 10 years ago, won a competition to do recycling deposits in Antwerp, and they're lousy places, you know, they should be lousy. I mean, that's how cities work, and we sort of won the competition by saying, yeah, we want to make, you know, spaces of gathering, of a certain communality. So we will not call them deposits, we will call them recycling squares, where you would kind of see each other throw away stuff, basically, but not in a long queue, not in a central dump, but something like, okay, a shared common space at the center. So this is one we finished. This is sort of like looking towards the city of Antwerp. So we gave it a strong, you know, orientation towards the city. It's a flat surface, but here at the end it's sort of a balcony. Cars pass lower. And then, you know, you have to do big gestures in suburbia to make space. So we came up with this thing the brief didn't ask. We're going to make a big banner. It's a bit like Route 66 notion of space making. A big banner which provides us with one facade. And then in this case, the staff building and the canopy were sort of merged by a big concrete beam, and we sort of tucked the building under that beam. There were huge sliding doors for, you know, vandalism prevention, and, you know, it's in Antwerp we call these the stinky eggs. They're like water treatment, and you know, this is also context, and we kind of I like this picture because it nicely addresses how you relate to your neighbors also in unsuspected places. And they also asked us to do a little building for the guy at the barrier, and then first we started designing, you know, this structure. It's a nice tiny steel thing, and then I felt like, can't we just have a sewage tube with the hole? Very cheap. And I think our photographer, Philippe Dujardin, really was being very thirsty when he made this picture. It's quite witty. This is the beam. I mean, the beam is made of 3 beams. It's actually a little bit, yeah, stupid to want this to be so. But it's kind of fancy, you know, cantilevering. So there's only one. So this is kind of a wall, and then you have only 3 columns, I think, where it rests on, and it cantilevers a lot here, etc. Yeah. And then you can hide behind it for a cigarette or a coffee. Oh, sorry. Yes. Apparently it's drawings. So we I wouldn't maybe call it circularity, but there is a fascination for you know, a highly composed building of loose elements. We referred for ourselves a lot to this book, which is actually just a balancing act of objets trouvés, of, you know, found objects, and it became a metaphor which we used when designing these buildings, because in a way you can't make it as wild as officially wise, but, you know, in a way it kind of belongs to this world of stuff being thrown away, or, you know, stuff making suburban spaces. We have some facade, but it's kind of like naked facade. It feels like it's unclad. It's part of an interior world, which is also using this notion of nakedness in structural expression. It's just a simple enfilade where you go through some skylights. This is an extremely stupid kitchen because it's actually black MDF, which we mostly painted white, and then you have to push for the drawer. So there you have these vast handles, which are, you remember when you had Lego fridge, you had to glue. Sorry, this is I skipped. It's too embarrassing. This is another container park where we made an inclination. So you kind of hear the topography was different. You drive up, and at the end you have the same sort of balcony moment. The banners on the right, a long king canopy on the left. Same sort of plan, same size of building, banners. This is sort of like this balcony moment where we don't need fences anymore. This is the building here. Again, it's kind of a building which sort of pushed back. Again, in a context like that, we felt like, yeah, any elevation is almost too much of, the notion of elevation is almost too formal for a building in this context. You would, again, like to make it feel like it is naked. So we used industrial bricks and sliced them in two. Important reason for that is that you can make good corners, it's one of the reasons industrial bricks aren't so popular in exposed masonry. But here we could have good corners. It's kind of a very rough, simple, cheap material. And on the inside, they're just smooth. You can sit here in the window. There's another window there which allows the staff to look at who's coming. It's another enfilade, but it's slightly curved here, and you step up together with the topography of the site. And at the end of the curve, there's this round window here and here. There's a little movie about it. It takes 2 minutes or something. Someone needs to go to the bathroom. It's a fantastic firm they called Zabo, Sagen en Boor. It's pure poetry if you're familiar with Dutch. Okay, we'll go into the building. So up in again another enfilade, stepping up with the slope. Here we played further with these industrial bricks. Again, they don't have nice ends, so we just sort of slice them. We have another of those windows, a glossy blue ceiling. This is the dining area. I like this one. I just mannerist is this word which sounds a bit snobby sometimes. Also, I'm not so happy with that because I think it's more of a lifestyle. And I think somehow, if you understand what this means, in a way, it's about an attitude where the friction and the backlash you suffer a lot in our profession becomes a bit of a game. Like you do A and someone says B and you say I can't, and you come up with C and then he says D. It's not just about how things look. It's more of a strategy to operate. It's very hard to convey visually. Maybe I just thought. Because mannerism, if you go through art historian lists, you would see names of the 17th century, I guess, or so, but that's not exactly what I mean. So, for instance, here in Horta's house, there was this beam, let's say, on this quirky position above a door, and then it just does, and I would, that's a certain, virtuosity which allows you to fix problems. And here he has the same problem, but maybe a bit less money, and he just paints something which reconstructs the symmetry above the window, and then it's also fixed. So it's kind of nice. And then Lutyens probably is the funniest architect of history. That's one of his achievements. But I'll come back to it's not very architectural though. He's funny for different reasons. But I'll go through this project, and there's a bit of Lutyens on the way. So it's the last project, and then you can go home. It's a project where we had a competition where the city owned these 3 buildings, so 1, 2, 3, and they wanted to use this is the main shopping street in Antwerp, and this used to be the fisherman's house, but now it's one shop. These are 2 shops, but the front door here and here disappeared, and only here the front door remained, and it was empty when we started the competition, but there was some student housing actually all over this building before, and yeah, it's quite a. I mean, we really were fascinated by these buildings. On the inside they were extremely disappointing. These were just rooms. I mean, I thought like this just looks like my house. It's not special. While the facades were quite amazing. So in that era, late 19th century, they did these competitions where half of the budget went into the facade. And that seemed to... So in a way, the brief of the competition is very simple. Like you should use the central core and the front door, and then make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 apartments. And in a way, it's a very ugly idea, to make an apartment which crosses from one house to the other. It's not a very elegant proposition. It's very disconnected from, what these buildings historically were. But then we were also, very fascinated about this eclectic architecture. It probably has the worst reputation in art history because it's just crazy collage of stuff. But if you look at let's do a shop front with an arch, and there's a Neptunus here, and then a balcony and a granite column, and then we put a window bay, with this triangular bottom, which hits these two curves, and then I put a boat on top of the window bay with a goat, and then there's another baldachin, and then there's two golden angels and a tower and a tempietto with a golden eagle. It's kind of like it's an interesting design. not the sort of thing we're used to. I mean, we're taught to think of in terms of architecture. And it's same for the central facade. There's this, this graffito and this Venetian arches, another tower, and so we thought like, this sort of a cumulative way of looking at architecture is actually quite fascinating. I mean, people put it under heritage protection. Nobody dared to knock it down. So maybe it's not popular in terms of, let's say, architectural history, but it is fascinating. So in a way, our competition proposal was to be, very gentle and very empathic with this weird building, because other proposals would, only leave the front facade and change everything else. And so we need a new stair in the center axis, because we were eliminating 2 stairs at the far ends of those 3 buildings. It had to be a bit more glamorous. There's also a connection to the elevator. Elevators don't really fit in the atmosphere, so we hid it behind the faux marbre door. Nobody now finds the elevator. I mean, visitors. Last time I was there was a wedge under the door, and they destroyed Tower ID. Well, it's also confirmation of the success, you could say. Anyway, so this is here. The rest of the design actually is just about these 4 floors. This is just remains reserved for shops. So essentially, we had to, make two apartments in these 3 buildings. This is. We're going left, yes. So we actually made a dining area here and a new kitchen, and then there's a sitting area here. There's a bedroom, a bathroom. But we really stumbled into this problem, which was already sort of visible in the building. That there were many of these cuts through the how do you call them again? The communal walls? No, Sorry, party walls? Yes, the party wall. Anyway, and in many places you had these fireplaces, these chimneys sitting actually a bit in the wrong position. And then we reminded Lutyens and chimney places is quite something. It's a beautiful page in a book where you can see that a fireplace can also be merged with a cupboard and becomes a bit of a nice niche. Or here you have a window on top of it, and it's I don't know how it does it with the smoke, but it becomes an element which is kind of a double functioning. Sometimes features of the facade are returning in the building. In a way, what's so cute about fireplaces is that they're little buildings inside a building, no? If you look well, and you can I think Lutyens understood that very well. So while bumping into the fireplace and wanting to make an extra rooms, we also thought like maybe we can make a double functioning element and make a door which is still in a way a fireplace. So we struggled a bit with not making it too historically over historical, but this is a new door. This is the old ceiling which still sits on top of it. So this is here, and this is the new door between the dining and the sitting area. And there's also a new window here, but this is a new arch to the kitchen. This is a new window to the entrance hall. This is where you would enter the building and go to the dining area. There's a shaft hidden. When you step down and you look back, we kept the fireplace here, but we placed a new cutout above it. If you're familiar with Magritte, you might appreciate it a bit better, but it's has this sharp kind of James Turrell corners, and then you look through the windows of the neighboring room into the street. Same stuff, enfilade to the back. Other apartment on the right side, where we have a bit of this kitchen problem. Kitchen problem being, the fact you have worktop height and fridge height, and something you struggle with, also certainly with these very high ceilings. So this is the kitchen, but this is the fridge, and here are the plates, and they become a building in the wall, like a transitional threshold between two very high rooms, a new cutout. Another connection between dining and sitting area. So this was the kitchen, this is the sitting area. We just, in a more sober way, make this cutout and see-through. Then we go to the back of the apartment, where we have a bedroom and a bathroom. We had the old staircase taken out, but then still the elevation being under heritage protection. So those are these stepping windows. There's an old piece of plaster which we retained. This is an old study model where we kept it and tucked the bath underneath. So you come down along this curved shower, and then you have, I don't have a good picture, but this is the old stucco thing. This is now a mirror. This is a bath. It's kind of a bit of a private Trevi fountain. This is a third floor actually. Fourth. Anyway, next where we there are no balconies on this floor in the facade, so we made a balcony on top of this bathroom in the back. So here the living room is not 2 rooms along the street, but one sitting room at the street side, one dining room in the back, and then along the kitchen you can go to a terrace in the back. There's this big window bay of the fisherman's house. There's a new cutout which kind of resonates. So it's a lot of work we do to connect the facade and the motifs in the facade with new additions in the interior. Here you have 2 windows which we sort of faked, and then a real one. And here you step up along, fridge and cupboard to the kitchen with fast exhausts. It's just MDF. There's a bit of a storage area in an old corridor. And we go to the sleeping area. Studies on new doors in an old setting. Wardrobes. A very high bathroom, which sort of through new movements kind of scales down. Some mezzanines for the kids. So we were here, we're going here, where we kept the old cute fireplace here. You can step diagonally along it. You have another cutout to the dining area. So 2 steps down. On your way, there's a bedroom which can open up to these living room areas. There's a rather disappointing fireplace here, but we sort of extended it into the sill of this new opening. Again, you can look through the window into the street. Oh yeah, this is a fake beam. This is a real beam, and that's another fake beam. Just to make this stupid one real beam kind of work in an interesting ceiling figure. We're a bit nervous about this retro kitchen, but then we worked on a kind of more simple interpretation of a classical element with sort of door handles, drawer handles worked into it. There's a tumble dryer and a washing machine, which we incorporated. Bathroom. Oh, oops, at the other floor. Sorry, too fast. I think we're going this side. This is the floor with the Venetian balconies in the middle building. They're very nice. Ceilings are lower here, and our interventions are more modest. So the same two cutouts, but then just humbly with marble reveals, but nicely relating to the Venetian granite columns. Yeah, the same sort of motifs differently. We go to this side, yeah. It's another of these kitchen figures. A new ceiling here, which hides some ducts we had to hide. Another of these cutouts from sitting to dining area. This is a side picture. This is another of these wardrobes, new openings. This is, I don't know, maybe a problem you're familiar with, the headboard. I mean, the chimney where I want a bed problem, which we sort of fixed by making a headboard, the rental apartment. So that you can put your bed against this without needing to amputate anything against this figure, and you can have your teeth in here in a small niche. You can slip into the bathroom, which, this again, quite retro stuff. It's kind of there's a screen kind of built into the room with a shower and a cupboard and a bit of wardrobe to the cloakroom, to the entry hall. Funny picture because it's a small room. It's some brass and pink tiles. And then we go to the attic. This is almost end of the lecture. So two space in the attic. Here there were never fireplaces, just smokestacks where we cut through. And there's sort of a roof kitchen under the roof. These are original openings, and this is one we added. We also made a totally useless cutout. So they do have a fireplace and can compete with the others. It kind of dresses up the room. There are new skylights. We go to this side of the apartment, where you go up from one house to the other. There's a very high roof here with a mezzanine. This is the existing situation. There's a nice coffee corner here now as a kitchen tucked into the corner. If you do your dishes, you can see the butt of the golden angel. This is a fridge. It's some adaptation to the smokestacks. This is the mezzanine. We go up. So here you see one of these turrets, and you look down into the street. So that was here. But then there's this other part, the sleeping area, where we also had this beautiful turret, part of the apartment, and obviously had to be a shower. So it's kind of a shower tower. So this is a bathroom. We built this wall to make a niche for the bath, and then there's the other niche for the shower. So here you look from the shower into the bath niche, and here you look from the bath into the shower. Here you can see something of the tower. So I was like, also on the train, I was thinking like, you're talking about, phenomenological stuff and aesthetics and beauty, and we're in the middle of this horrific climate crisis. Isn't it perverse? But then I thought Joe-Ponti is really good. So he says, like, should I read it out? But not cement, not wood, not stone, not steel, not glass is the most durable raw material. The most durable raw material is art, always the raw material. So man abandons to time all things without art, whether they're made of steel, cement, wood, and they go into ruin. Things of art, poetry, fragile, delicate paintings of canvas or silk are being saved, protected, restored, repaired, and nobody wants to give them up. So basically, I think it's very powerful to care about composition, and I think it's a very fundamental aspect of sustainability. And I also like, this is the short version of that quote, beauty is lasting because men take care of it. Palladios buildings are made of plaster, but they are beautiful and thus they endure. So that's the end of the lecture. Thank you. Oh, no. Don't applaud. Yes. Benjamin was going to ask a nasty question, he told me.
Concocting it.
Concocting, okay.
Yeah, so I have a question. I was wondering, you've done quite some research on the ancient, and also within the design you do quite a little of a play between the old and the new. And with this you make quite some references to institutional elements and typologies. And I was wondering how you sort of think that how people would perceive these elements as sort of these institutional characteristics. If you get my question.
No, institutional, I'm a bit stuck on, what's an institutional element?
Yeah, like for instance, the element of the arcade, like.
Okay, this sort of vestigial element. Yes. I don't know, but what I could answer to that question is what I do sense is, as a designer, talking to clients, you are very respected if you're very confident about compositional aspects. You might assume that, clients want you to talk about, cost and timing and the program. But if you say if you're very outspoken to a client, the client says, I want 4, not 5, and you say, yeah, that's not gonna work. Sorry, but we'll fix it for you. We'll do it. We'll find a mannerist move. You gain a lot of respect. So the idea that design and compositional insight is something, not really of an argument, not accepted as an argument, I think it's not true. But you have to you have to say things people understand, and which sounds probable. All the conceptual mumbo jumbo, that's what clients really hate. That's what they really hate. But if you say no, it's going to be too ugly, then they really listen to you. But if you come up with these sophisticated words, they like, oh, I don't understand architects. That's what they think. I don't know if it's an answer to your question. But
It's an answer to another question.
Okay, to your next one. I'm not sure. But sometimes, you also don't talk about it. So a lot of timing in the profession. if you do a recycling deposit, we barely talk about how it looks. You just talk about how it works, and then they just build it, and then it works, and then then you tell a very different story to your audience. But that's also not a problem. I guess that was always also true in architecture. Yeah, you have to adapt to the audience for sure. Is that a question? Answer to your question?
Yeah,
To
thank
another
you.
question.
No, it's-
To your third question. Okay.
No, thank you. Can I pass it along? Someone has a question?
More questions?
Okay, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I was wondering, what is your creative process usually like?
Sorry?
What is your creative process usually like?
Ah, yeah, that's yeah, it's also, lectures are a bit of a char, you know, so to go through all the steps, you generally work back from the end result to in a way, construct a bit of a story. To be honest, if I have to design something like for myself without a client, I don't like it so much, because the resistance you get from a client, I think it's very useful. Obviously, you know, it's not that all clients are fantastic. That's totally not true. But I like the process of you know, getting nasty comments and taking them back to the drawing table. One rule we have in the office is if you don't like it, draw it. Because very often, you know, a client wants something, you think, no, and then you go home. You know, you're not depressed. You draw it. You draw what he wants, and you work from there, and it works fantastically. And rather than having all this, you know, like shouting on the phone or sending nasty emails, you know, work from the point where, you know, they want you to send, they want you to go, and then don't go there, but start there and work from there. And okay, maybe this is not, I mean, you're students, you're not yet used to, you know, how difficult this profession is if you're not getting help, or actually getting the reverse of help from a client. But it's actually fun. But it's very, I don't believe in this defending your first sketch thing. That's not. It's bad energy, and it's sleepless nights and frustration. So I think by having a good set of references, you just feed yourself with a lot of good material. There's always a move to make. No, that's how I would describe it. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I hear you describing some of the details in your buildings ugly, and I just wonder what's your relationship with what you call ugly in the final buildings? Like, what's your attitude with this ugliness, or relationship with it?
I'm joking, they're all super pretty buildings. No, but no, ugly is not good, but there is something of a challenge in I know, using very vulgar materials and trying to project aesthetical ambitions onto them. So there's certainly a lot of it's also a bit of this, you know, Flemish fashionable to work with industrial materials, and I like it, certainly in container parks, and then it's very situated. I don't like it in a historic building, so yeah, I like to be, I like to work, very, in a very empathical way. So, it's a difficult question, but yeah. Well, what's the ugly example you would mention? Ah, the ugly plan, maybe. That's. I did say I built an ugly plan. Yeah, the care home ground floor plan is ugly. But I think we judge buildings also too much by a floor plan, for instance. That's also one of the mistakes we tend to make. So eventually it's the experience of the building which really counts. And we're super interested in pathways, scenographical approaches to buildings, so different things happening one after the other. It's an architecture which, it's not so successful in terms of visual media because people see one image and they don't really understand what the project is. So in lectures it works a bit better because people start to experience the sequence of stuff. But obviously the going there is even better, for sure. Yeah.
Before handing...
So that's why, an ugly plan can be a very beautiful walk, And then that's much more important than the plan.
Before handing it over to my dear Esther to ask a question, one thing that I think is maybe missing a little bit from the lecture, and maybe you could reflect on it, is the kind of hands-on ability of this kind of work, which we see through the drilling of the hole, the boring. For me, I would describe that as very Belgian opportunities, very sort of specific to a kind of way of working. And that is very, dare I say, Flemish. And I do not mean that in a derogatory way, but there's just a kind of other kind of mentality of working one-on-one with contractors, going to the site, engaging within materials, even the fact of every building project, even if it's a shed, needs to have a licensed architect attached to it. So my point here is that it is a cultural, it's embedded within the cultural production. And I was wondering if you could just reflect a little bit about that as a kind of design opportunity, that kind of, let's say, hands-on approach, which I would call Belgian, Flemish maybe, even. And how that influences these ideas of beauty, etc., right? Because that is the only way to, you're able to get your hands dirty instead of the kind of abstraction which exists in a place like the Netherlands, where at some point you are, pushed as far away from the realization process as possible.
Yes, that's a good question. It is true. We're very lucky to get involved in all the. We're not just involved in all these stages. You just do it. We just make the tender documents and cost calculations and the building sites. That's almost always like that. So it's that's fun. I also like to sometimes also say that because in Holland it's so professional. It's not so fun for a designer because there's so many consultants and people, which have been deciding stuff before you come to the table. That the limit of what you can do is more reduced. Like the care home I showed, it's so fun because you're actually doing urbanism and architecture and interior, and it's all there. And the fun fact about the terrible urbanistic tradition of Belgium is that you have to fix all these things on a building level. So in Holland, it's all been sorted out before you enter the scene. And in that way, the ugliness of Belgium is also the reason why I think it's probably a little bit more fun to be an architect there. Although, you have to live in an ugly country. So that's the downside. And I don't know if that's sufficient of an answer. I could say so many more things. But it's true. I mean, we now do one small corner in a housing project in Holland. Oh, it's 20 apartments or something. But it's very different. But the game is the game is there. You know, there are all these consultants telling you what you shouldn't do and bring down the cost, and it's endless. But I still like playing the game. But it's obviously there's so much of the building which is already decided before you really. So it will be. I mean, I think every you just have to accept some of these conditions. So every game is a different game, and some games are more profound, and some are a little bit more shallow. But just as long as there's a game to play, I'm in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I also have a question.
Yes.
First of all.
We've done design studios together, but
Yeah.
quite a while ago. Yes.
Good memories
Yes.
to that. First of all, thank you very much introducing this very diverse and interesting projects. I want to continue a bit on the question of how you design, because how you present it now, you show that actually for each of the project there was one architect or one book that was as a kind of guiding theme through the design process, or it seems that how you presented that certainly this connection was very important for the development of the project, especially with the what you introduced with the latest projects, all these the harde,
the fireplaces.
The fireplaces, that
Yeah.
you suddenly saw it as a continuous theme. And I'm wondering how that works in the office or in your own mind, that when you work on a project, when this kind of reference comes in. Is it in the beginning? Are you brainstorming together?
I think it's continuously, and it's a good question because indeed the lecture is a bit of a genre, and you show it the way you show it. But it's also a mindset of being very associative in your thinking. I actually also in teaching, I always say, try to think associative. You know that you can think conceptual or analytic. I also like a lot the associative thinking. So we have a vast library, but it can't beat the internet. So actually, I'm a big fan of Google and design because it's so fast. But you obviously have to have the more background and knowledge you have, the easier you find your way. But sometimes you hear people say, students, they look at too many images in Pinterest, and then I sometimes think like, you can't see too many images. You just okay. It's good if you can be selective, but in a way, I like this kind of continuous influx of visual information. And I have huge folders on my laptop, which is just where if I see with weird subfolders, which says graphical facade or mannerist window bay or whatever, just weird folders. But just to try to have some structure there. But in the process, we almost, in every design discussions, there are several buildings passing by, and they can be very famous or contemporary or very old. But I think, I also, just see as many cities and places and buildings as you can. I think it's the best way to learn, and never look to the ground and always up, and you'll be a fantastic designer.
And going back to the references you choose, it seems to me that you're very fond of the Art Deco Paris architecture. Is that true?
Well, I have yes. I think everyone has his personal favors, and I have. If I look at my library, I have this is the Lutyens, and then I have Le Corbusier, and and then there's Kahn, and then there's Mies. So I clearly have things I favor a lot more than others. But I also try, I think it's good also, 15 years ago I hated Kahn, and now I like it. So, and I still hate Scarpa. I think it's overcooked and I don't know, but maybe in 10 years I like it. So I think it's also not a static aspect, and I like brutalist buildings a lot. But yeah, that's the cold bridging. but you know, it's also good to like very different things. So I also try not to be too selective. But you know, if you really look at the and then I might sound a bit retro. If you really look at the ability and the skill of designing, something really happened, you know, around the 30s, 40s, 50s, and in a way, composition became a bit of a taboo subject in the 60s, 70s, I would say, and it killed a lot of the body of knowledge of architecture, which I think actually makes us weaker in a societal position than stronger. Because if we can't tell people, clients, whoever, what a you know, well-composed building is, then yeah, who are we?
I have a question. So you talk about mannerism and accumulation, and there's for sure no fear in mixing materials, geometries, forms. My question is, so, well, I think it takes a lot of skill to do that. And once you've opened this Pandora box of possibilities, how do you know when to stop? Because I think it can be a temptation to.
That's a funny question. When to stop? That's a good one. Yeah. No, it's yeah. But I you know, in the office, you know, that's generally something your collaborators can tell. And also, I don't like this idea that you know you're this guy sketching in the corner and then people draw. It doesn't really work. So it's more of a process of people trying things I ask them to do, and then they come back with something different, and we change it, and we make many alternatives, and also at a certain point, you know, you just use the group of people you have, and you say like, does this still matter? What do you think? You just use the gut feeling of the group to say like, no, let's stop, or let's take that thing out again. You know, I think there also I believe that there's a lot of you know, subconscious knowledge in a group of designers. Yeah. Aha, the nasty question.
I also get to ask the last question I heard from Solomon.
Okay, very good.
You briefly touched upon the city already, and then you just mentioned the 60s and the 70s. And before the lecture, we touched on Hertzberger and Aldo van Eyck, and Aldo van Eyck's famous quote of the building as a city, the city as a building. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the city?
On the city. I was hoping you would end just 2 seconds earlier, because I really like the notion city and building. It's a folder on my computer. Like buildings who play with interiorizing urban scenes. Lutyens was really good in, you know, using elevations on the inside. So there's a nice continuity. Also, again, it's something we kind of lost a little bit. The relation between inside and outside in buildings, we disconnected. We even made a different profession for it, you know, interior design, which doesn't really make sense in a classical understanding of architecture, you know, because buildings have a very good, let's say, old buildings. This one's been stripped on the inside, but they have a very sophisticated relation between in and outside. It's not the same, it's not literally, but you can see that motifs come back, or a certain, you know, graphicality returns. it's an ability to understand. It's one of the most difficult things of architecture, I would say, the relation of the outer appearance of a building and the inner appearance. I think to play that game well is one of the tougher ones, because you have the brutalist concept of a total continuity, which I think is a little bit perverse. And then you have the total disconnect on the other side, which is totally rubbish and silly. But in the center, between these extremities, it has a very interesting playing field. I think Marius once mentioned it, who worked in our office, a friend. He said that the color schemes of Victorian buildings are actually often the complement of their outside. So you would find a lot of brown brick on the outside and bluish ceilings and stuff on the inside. I haven't found so many visual material which actually really confirms that, but it was one of the moments I was thinking like, okay, yeah. There is a complexity in this play between inside and outside, which is about difference and continuity. And actually, all in architecture is basically about difference and continuity. In good composition, it's always about that. So that's a good conclusion.
Thank you for this lecture.
Okay.